All right, we are going to go ahead and get started because, as you know, these sessions tend to take the full hour. I am delighted to once again be introducing Miley Duong. She's going to be doing the third part of the series. Today we're looking at Google Slides for instructors. And I also wanted to remind you, if you could give us feedback, I'll be putting a link in the chat for feedback on this and any of the previous sessions, as well as a link to our upcoming event on November 18th. We're going to have a faculty panel looking at mobile learning. Right, so thank you, Miley.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you so much to the TLC for giving us the opportunity to meet like this. This three-part series has been such a blast to be a part of. And so thank you for those of you who've been able to join us for the first session as well as the second session. And so happy to have you back to our third session. Or if you're new, welcome. And we do have the first two sessions recorded, so you can always watch on your own time as well. As Kirsty has already said, my name is Miley Duong. I am super excited to be facilitating and working with you all today. Today we're working on Google Slides. And while I get my screen up and rolling, for those of you who don't know me, I am an ASDO alum. And so I've been with AT Still for about 10 years now, including my time as a student and a resident. And now I'm full-time faculty in our dental clinic. One of my passions is definitely teaching our faculty how to use technology. And one of the greatest things, and I call a perk, being faculty, is that we have access to the Google Suite of apps. So for many of you who do in-classroom teaching, Google Slides is definitely something that I'm sure you have heard about if you don't already use on your own, but many of our students use it. And for those that are in clinic, even though you may not have official classroom time, I actually teach full-time, I would say, in the clinic, but I do have weeks, like 1 week here or 1 week there throughout the year that I do in classroom teaching. And I also speak as well. And so many of you, even though you might be considered full-time clinical teaching, there may be many opportunities where you are asked to speak at different events or for different other speaking opportunities. And Google Slides might be a great option for you. And so we'll kind of briefly go over that for a second, over the features. And then I'd like to actually get us all into breakout rooms earlier so we can play with Google Slides more. I did not want to share. I apologize. I wanted to present. There you go. So the presentation that we're going to go over, and for those of you who joined us for session 1 and 2, my presentations were all made in Google Slides. Google Slides, for many of you guys know, it is part of what's called the Google environment or the Google series or the Google Suite. It comes with what we've already reviewed before, which is Google Drive as well as Google Docs. Those are all considered programs that are often used in business or in academia. Google Drive, just to review, is kind of like a digital organized filing cabinet where you can store your files. Google Docs is the equivalent to Microsoft Word. So for many of us who have been working with, computers for a long time, probably are very familiar with Google or with Microsoft Word. And Google Docs is the equivalent to that. And then today we're going over Google Slides, which is equivalent to Microsoft PowerPoint. So for those who are familiar with PowerPoint, you will see that many of the features are similar in Slides. It's just some things look a little bit different. Some things look a little bit more aesthetic or maybe less aesthetic to your eyes. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But some of the great things about just the Google Suite in general is the ability for synchronization and accessibility. Synchronization talks about the ability to sync across multiple platforms. And so this Google Slides presentation that you're looking at today, because I have it stored in my Google Drive, which is in the Google Cloud or the, up in the space, I can access it from my tablet, my iPad, my phone, my work computer, or my laptop when I'm traveling, because it's all being able to sync across multiple platforms. My accessibility, the accessibility component is that as long as I have Wi-Fi, I can always have access to whatever files there are. So one of the great things about that is convenience. I don't, I used to, and I still do to some extent because of a security thing, but I used to carry a lot of junk jump drives with me with my PowerPoint presentation or my Word files. And if I left that jump drive somewhere or at home, I wouldn't have access to my files, or maybe I left it in the car. But because I store everything in my Google Drive, as long as I have internet and a electronic device to access, I can jump on my Google Drive and access any of my files at any time. And so that makes it really convenient. The other possibility of, or the other great thing about that is I have the ability to share my files with other people. So before, when I was working locally, locally is where you're not working from like a shared space or a cloud. If I had a PowerPoint presentation and I made some edits to it and I was working with a partner on it, I would have to like email that PowerPoint to my partner, and then they'd make some changes. But in the meantime, if I made changes, it wouldn't reflect in real time for that one copy I emailed to my partner. So then there's always that risk that you have multiple versions of a PowerPoint. The great thing about Google Slides is I have one version of it or one file of it. And then when I share that file with my partner or multiple partners, in this case, or in our case, we may have a group of students working together on one slide presentation, and they can access it at the same time from any location. As long as they have Wi-Fi, they can work on it at the same time, regardless of where they are. And so that's one of the activities that we're going to be doing today. When you break out in groups, you'll be working on one Google Slides presentation together, all at the same time from wherever it is that you're tuning or zooming in from. So collaboration is great. It allows for synchronous collaboration, which is happening all at the same time, or asynchronous collaboration, which means, I might be up late at 2 a.m. and working on this slide presentation. And in the morning when you wake up, you can access it and be able to see the changes I made. And then you can make changes, and I'll always see it on my end as well, either in real time or later when I check back in on the file. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's I have a version, you have a version, and then we have to kind of cross-reference and, make sure everything is all in there. Now, when we talk about things like that, sometimes one of the concerns that people will have is, well, what if my partner deletes an entire, slide, or maybe they delete 10 slides of what I worked on? The great thing about Google is Google has what's called version history, where you can actually go to an older version. So it'll save different points in time of the slide presentation. So many times, you get along, you're working on a slide presentation with a team of people, and it's been a week since you last looked at the slides or whatnot, and you're like, you know what? I thought that there was like these 2 slides here, but where did those slides go? You can always backtrack to last week's version or another version, because Google will keep different versions of that presentation from different points in time. So if you need to go back and find something that was accidentally deleted, you can have that opportunity. So it's not that, if someone accidentally deletes something, don't fear, you can still pull it back from history. The other thing from an education standpoint I like to do is oftentimes you don't know who did what on a slide presentation. So sometimes I might like to go back and look at the version history to see, oh, this student was the one who worked on this slide. Or, many times I might say, oh, this student that worked on this slide, this information is kind of outdated or incorrect. And I'll use version history to find out who it was, so I can talk one-on-one with that student. Or maybe I might say that, hey, this slide is very well done. And I will look back at that version history to kind of be able to acknowledge, oh, Janet did a great job on, as I'm giving feedback to the whole team, I might say on slide number 12, where Janet was working on this part, that was great. That was a great point that she made. And so sometimes I'll use it to either give kudos, or I might use it to correct a student or give feedback for a student. But one of the great things about collaboration is you can collaborate, but the downside to that is there might be that fear you might lose information. But I would encourage you not to be too fearful because of the ability to recall or pull back to an older version if you find that you're missing information. Things to note, we've talked about this before, I just want to highlight it again, especially for those who have joined us for the first time today, is, everything that I've spoken about the last 2 sessions and today is based on the assumption that you have Wi-Fi access or internet access. There are going to be opportunities where you may not have Wi-Fi connection, maybe you're traveling somewhere and you want to have access to the files on your Google Drive, there is an option for Google Suite for Desktop, which allows you to work offline, and it allows you to access those files, make changes, and the next time you have Wi-Fi, the Google Suite for Desktop app will then upload and make changes accordingly so that it reflects properly. But that's not something we're going to talk about today. That's more of an advanced feature that you can contact the TLC or look into on your own if you're interested in that. I also want to preface that if you will be joining us and actively working on our breakout rooms today, I do encourage you to be logging in through a desktop computer or a laptop. Mobile devices with tablets or iPads require that you download additional apps in order to participate in the things that we're doing. So I would encourage you to log in using a laptop or a desktop instead of using mobile devices such as a phone or a tablet or an iPad, because they do require additional programs downloaded to the device. It just makes things a little bit more messy today as you participate. But I hope that if you are in that situation where you can't log in with a laptop or a desktop, you can still observe what your group or your breakout room is doing. And then for those of you who, I do welcome questions. Don't hesitate, and please feel free to interrupt when I'm talking. But we do have members of our team overseeing the chat to answer your questions, and I trust that our team members will also interrupt me as well if there's any questions to be asked for the whole group. I'm going to quickly go over some demo. I'm going to demo our slides and the environment within Google Slides, and then we'll break out in breakout groups. Any questions before I kind of go over our environment in slides? Awesome. So one of the first things that we will do is, how do you get to the Google Slides? And especially when I'm starting a new Google Slides presentation, I like to organize or create that file inside the Google Drive, the location that I want to store it. And so historically, for those who've been with us, we have navigated to our, the way you access your drive is by going to your internet or your email. That's the wrong email, I apologize. Let's go with this email. I have a lot of tabs, forgive me. But when you're in your ATSU account or your Gmail ATSU account, you'll scroll over to the dots up in the upper right. And when you click on that, you will have access to your drive. When you click on your Google Drive icon, it'll take you to your Google Drive. And in Google Drive, we've created a folder called TLC Google Drive, Google Series. So I'm navigating to it right now, TLC Series. I'm going to double click on it. We've already created a subfolder from our first session, which is Google Drive, and our second session from Google Docs. We're going to create a new one, new folder. We're going to call it Google Slides, and I'm going to press Create. And then I'm going to go in here in my Google Slides, and then I'm going to go ahead and click New. And not folder, I apologize, new, and one of the drop-down options is Google Slides. Now with Google Slides, similar to Google Docs, you have the option to create a blank presentation or start from a template. For today's purposes, we're going to go with blank presentation, but just know there is a template option where there's already pre-made presentations where you can just simply click and drag or click and delete and change things and customize it. Again, that's more of an advanced feature we're not going to go over today. We're going to go with blank presentation today. I'm going to click on blank presentation. Oftentimes, for our purposes, because I have previously shared this folder with other members of our team, a little pop-up menu will show up asking you, or kind of mostly telling you, hey, this folder where you're about to create a Google Slides file, it's going to be shared with the same people who have access to this folder. Are you sure you want to proceed? If not, you can cancel. But if not, you are creating a Google Slides file, and it will be shared and accessed by other people who have access to this folder. And I'm already aware of that, so I'm just going to proceed with create and share. So now I've created a new, there's a new Google Slides presentation that shows up. For the presentation, I usually always like to title it, and so today we'll go ahead and title it my all-time favorites. And And then there's always a slide right there that's already started. On the right side of the screen, you'll see that there's an automatic option for you to create themes. Themes allows you to create some kind of continuity between your slides. It's more so for an aesthetic purpose, as I'm sure you know. And if you're familiar with PowerPoint, PowerPoint has a very same feature, which is called themes. And so we'll just randomly pick, I like, I'll probably just pick pink because I like pink. And then it changes, but you can feel free to change the theme, and it allows, especially for colors, as you build your presentation, the aesthetic look of it, the similar colors between your slides will tell your audience member that they're still in the same presentation. I don't know if you've ever been in a presentation where every slide is completely different than the other. Sometimes you wonder if you're still at the same presentation by the same person who's presenting. So that's what one of the purposes of a theme is. The menu bar at the top, we already went over at our last session, but it's very similar to other menus that you've been working with, I hope so. So we're gonna kind of bypass that, but just know that there are options in the menu bar. There's also a format bar right along the top right here. This format bar changes depending on the object that you select in your presentation. So right now, because I have the whole slide selected, it allows me to change the background if I want. It allows me to change the layout. Let's say I don't want a title layout. I actually want a layout where I can type something in. So this is where I would change the layout. Maybe I want something different. And so it allows me to change the layout of the slide. I can change the theme if I'd like. And then of course, transitions is the transition between one slide to another. So if I go into insert, or I go to slide and I click new slide, I can then select a transition from one slide to the other. So by doing that, I click transition. The menu on the right side changes, and now I can choose from a drop-down menu of these options. Now, if you are a PowerPoint user, you will know that PowerPoint comes with about 40 to 50 different transitions, but in Google Slides, you are limited to these options. So that is a limitation of Google Slides, or a difference between Google Slides and PowerPoint, where you don't have as many options. I know there's spirals and little carousels and lots of different things, but in Slides, you have these options. So I'm a conservative and simple kind of girl. I usually will go with a dissolve, just because it's just common. And so, to check that, I would click present. And when I go to the next slide, you'll see that from one slide to the next, there'll be a dissolve. Oh, well, apparently that didn't work. Let's try that again. Dissolve, I'm gonna click, well, oh, it's probably when I enter. So it's probably if I go to the second slide, stop. Go to the second slide and I select dissolve again, then what happens when I present and I go to the next slide, you'll see the dissolve. Did you guys see it slowly dissolve? It may be difficult because I don't have any content. So let me type in some content. And that's the other thing that I wanted to kind of show you. As you put content in, and when I say content, I mean text, shapes, pictures, any kind of content or object in your screen. It changes this format bar up at the top. So when I click on this text, see how now I have a lot more options to change and play around with my text. I can change the color of it if I'd like. I can make it centered if I'd like, but these are all very similar, or options that are very similar if you have used any word processing programs or PowerPoint before. And so, as you select on different objects, you'll see that you have a lot more options to play around with. The other thing is adding animation that I'd like to kind of direct your attention to. So let's say, for example, I'm actually going to create a bulleted list here. And so it may be that I want these bullets to come in at different times, not all at the same time. So when I click on, the motion kind of shows up already on this side, but let's say, for example, I'm on themes. When I click on this, and my intention is to create these bullet points so they come in one at a time when I click, there's this option for animate up at the top. format bar and I'll click animate, and then that's where the side panel will come on. And now I can choose fade in, so you have a lot of different options. Again, not as many options as you would have in PowerPoint, but these are a pretty good amount. And so I can say, you know what, I want it to fly in from the left on click. And then let's play and see how that looks. Click, and then the whole thing comes on. So we may need to, sometimes it's a lot of playing around to kind of see how you want things to look. I'm going to click on play by paragraph and see how that looks. So now that allows me to determine, to do one by one. So again, this is a lot of playing around, and that's why we really want to jump into the breakout rooms to play around with that, and you can get comfortable with that. I'm going to quickly switch over and make sure I've gone through what I've wanted to. We'll go over share, comments, chat. These are things that we've already gone through, and it's across the board for all of the different Google platforms that you have the ability to share. Sharing is using this icon up at the top to share with other people, and you can control how they see or how they interact with your file. Comments, for example, one of the great things about comments is you can make a comment without making changes to the actual thing. So I might go in here and I might say, I'll go up here and insert comment. Insert comment, and I'll say, should we make this the color green? So I don't want to make it green yet because maybe I want to ask my partners who are working on this, do they think this is okay to do, to turn green? And so comments allows you the opportunity to make notes on the presentation without having to change the presentation. That way other members of your team can get an idea of what your thoughts are. The other thing that I wanted to kind of go over is chat history. Now, within Google Slides, you have the option to, if there are other people on your team, you can actually chat with them if you want to. So like in this presentation, I can see up here that I have 3 people looking at this presentation right now. That means if I click show chat, I can actually converse with them. And I see that Kirsty is on, so I'm gonna go, hi Kirsty. And hopefully she'll respond. There you go. And then I see David on here too. So I might say, hey David, on slide 22, I don't like that it's blue. What do you think about making it pink? That way, if I don't have my team on the phone, or maybe I'm not on a Zoom call with them where I can talk to them, I can actually talk to them right now. Or I can say, hi Kirsty, can you work on slide number 10 and create 4 bullet points. And that way it's a great way to kind of communicate within the Google Slides environment. So the chat feature is always found at the top right corner, and you'll also be able to see all, when you see bubbles like this with picture profiles, it tells you who is actively working on the form right now. The other thing is you also will see the little bumps. Like right now, I can see that Kirsty's working on slide 6, David's working on slide 5. So that's another feature of Google where collaboration comes into play, because you can see where everyone is working on, or what they're working on, or where there is literally in the presentation. And then I did want to talk about inserting images, video, and audio. We talked about transitions and animations already. And so I'll talk about that real quick, and then we'll break out into sessions. So I'm going to go to slide, new slide. And inside this, I'm going to actually I want to add an image. So one of the great things, we talked about this in Word before, or in Google Docs last week. And it's in the same menu place location in Google Docs as it is in Slides. And so Slides, I'm going to go to insert image, and same options. We can choose to insert an image from the drive. It'll pull up your drive, and you can select any of the pictures if you have any in your drive. And I have a lot of dental pictures, so you can pick from there. And how you would do it is you'd pick the picture, and then you can insert if you'd like. Another thing to insert a picture is I'm actually going to go new slide again. And on the new slide, I'm actually going to make this blank. And if I go up to insert, I can insert from, oops, daisy. I can insert from the web, which is one of my favorite features. I can actually type this in, and I can type tooth fairy. It'll pull up some tooth fairies. and then I can click on the one that I want, insert, and it'll pop right into my Google slide. And so those are great ways that you can upload, or you can find pictures, insert pictures. You can also upload from your computer if you'd like as well. So that's another option. Upload. I know that I have pictures. I have a picture of me and my students, and so I can insert a picture from my computer as well. You also have the ability to insert video, like YouTube videos. And so again, I'm just gonna go slide, new slide, insert video, and it'll bring up a window where you can actually start typing and searching within YouTube to insert a photo, or insert a video. So I might go lion, and a bunch of videos will show up, and I might say, you know what, I want this video. I'm going to select, and I'm not going to spend time right now, but play around with the video that you insert into your presentation, because you can actually control, like, oh, I only want it to play from minute 110 to minute 130. So you can actually play around with the different settings of the video that you insert into your slides presentation. And then there is an option to insert audio, but when you insert audio, it actually has to come from your drive. And so that's a little bit more advanced as well. You'll need to actually own the audio, upload it to your own drive, and then insert it into your slides presentation. But just know that you can insert audio if you'd like. Any questions before we break out into breakout sessions?
Yeah, Mei Li, this is Kelly Glazer. Can you voiceover record in Google Slides?
You know, I don't know if any of our members on our team know the answer to that. I have not done it personally where I directly record the voiceover into slides. What I've done is I will record onto my phone has an audio function where I can record my voiceover, and then I move that audio file into my drive and then put it into, once I have it in my drive, I'll go insert audio, and then I go to, like, for example, these are all my MP3s. I don't know if I have an audio recording that I recorded myself. Actually, I think this is one of them. So I can select the audio that I have and insert it that way into the slide.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that's, oh, I don't know what that is. But yes, that's how I would do it. David or Holly, Kirsty, anyone have any, can you directly record into slides, or would it just be recording separately and then uploading the file or inserting the file?
I'm not seeing that there's an option to record directly into, but there certainly seems to be a lot of workarounds. I was actually just looking over here on my own and how to insert audio into Google Slides, and should be able to go from there.
Yeah, so thank you, Holly. Yeah, so Kelly, I would recommend that you record however it is that you record. For example, for me, I record through voice memo on my phone, or I have GarageBand on my laptop, so I'll just record, and then it gives me a MP3 file, and I put that MP3 file directly into slides or put it into my drive and then insert it that way.
Hi, Meili.
Yes?
Wakil here. So I was wondering, when you upload an audio or a video into a shared file like this, and shared slides, would you be able to play that audio from another device as well? Does
Yes.
it go ahead with the file?
It should, as long as it is all housed in the Google Drive and that you're accessing from whatever device, it should play theoretically. Before, when you were working in PowerPoint, you'd have to make sure that all of the original files, pictures, video, audio files were all linked together properly inside like one folder. But when you're working in Google Drive, because it's all in cyberspace or in the cloud, if you're accessing it from whatever device, from that drive or from that Google slide, and Slides knows where that audio file is, then it should work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Dr. Misra. Hi, everybody. I'm just meeting everybody for the first time. I'm the new Associate Dean of Clinical Affairs. I will be taking over for Dr. Campbell as of December 1. I think one of the things to remember too is that if you are going to stream video or audio tracks from your Google Drive, recognize that you're essentially increasing the internet traffic load, and that can create delays in the video and the audio playback. Whereas if you store them locally on your computer, or you combine everything into export it into a PowerPoint show, you will have one less internet access point, which means one less gate that can slow down the playback and thus create that, that weird sync issue that often happens. Yeah, the buffering and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, keep going. I'm sorry. I was just going to say thank you so much for bringing that up.
No problem. And then the only other thing I would strongly suggest. So, Miley, I hope I'm saying your name right. I apologize.
Miley, like smiley.
Miley. Okay, that's perfect. And mine's Saroj, like, well, there's nothing actually that rhymes with Saroj, so I apologize. But Misra sounds like miserable or Mursa, so you're welcome to use that if you'd like. But one of the other things that Miley had alluded to too was about licensing and things like that. Technically, don't forget that songs and video clips can also fall under copyright laws and things like that. Now, there is generally, as long as you are giving a presentation for academic purposes and you are not generating profit off it and stuff like that, there is some gray area to allow for that. As a rule of thumb, what I would always recommend is if you make a citation on the slide itself, so putting in a small text box somewhere on the slide that indicates what the source for the item is and things like that. Because if you do that, you can legitimately say that you are attributing it as part of the presentation. And I found that I lecture a lot all over the country and at different conferences, and I've generally found that that will save you if there's some gray area or ethical area there. But as long as you're generally using something that's free via Creative Commons use, and then don't forget to look at ATSU's actual policies on that, because they have policies within the manual. So I will shut up, Miley. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm a big presentation nerd. That's why I'm on this thing. So I love it. You're doing great.
No, thank you, Saroj. I really appreciate all of your comments. You make such great points. And for those of you who are interested, I know that in the past, TLC has a TLC in combination with our IT services, our ITS, as well as our IT department. They have provided many resources as well as webinars on copyright, where you can spend a whole hour talking about how to navigate through the copyright scenarios. There's also other previous and past webinars and sessions that talk more about making sure you can properly citations, references, all of those legal stuff is really, really important. It's not something that we can just cover in a few minutes. I think Saroj did a great job. Dr. Misra did a great job at summarizing. But if you're interested in the details of that, I'm pretty sure TLC can definitely set up some additional courses on that if there's an interest in that. But there's also resources out there that you can look at on your own time as well. And the TLC is a great resource to all of our faculty on campus. Any other questions or comments before we proceed with our breakout session? Awesome. Let's go ahead and break into groups, and then we do, I have a list of things. So you will have a facilitator in your breakout session, and our goal is, again, today is more of, just like our Google Docs and our Google Drive is an introduction to Google Slides, just to get you comfortable with the environment within Google Slides as you transition. Hopefully you transition, and do more slides presentations. And I believe that, hands-on experience is one of the best ways to kind of just dive right in and learn something new. And so we have a list of things for you to kind of get used to within the slides environment. So we'll go ahead and break out and then work with your facilitator. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think we have everyone back in the main room. Patrick, I'm so sorry. You were in my breakout room, but then I lost you. So I hope you were able to get a little bit of hands-on experience or observe some. Do we want to share, any of our facilitators want to share any questions that you thought that, maybe your group talked about, but it might be useful to share with the group? David, Holly, Kirsty?
I think one of the cool things that we noticed is when you do hit the insert image, that sometimes it'll populate with just the generic Google sign, and you need to look for the top section where you're typing at. There's no specific type here. And that was slight confusing, but once we got past that, everything worked well.
Oh, good.
We had a really interesting discussion about when you're adding videos, looking at the playback features that not only allow the autoplay, but also the idea of muting, right? So that if you don't like what somebody is saying in their YouTube video, but they've got a really good hands-on demonstration, you could just use the video of the demonstration and then provide your own audio.
Oh, that's a great tip. Holly, anything from your room?
Well, we just had a question if this presentation, more particularly the slide deck, would be sent out for further reference later on via TLC or anyone like that.
Yeah, we'll have a copy of the slides, as well as this afternoon, we should also have a copy of the recording posted to the TLC Learning channel.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do any of our attendees want to add additional information or any other questions that you're excited
Actually,
to ask?
I do have one comment. There were put into the chat window a lot of very good resources for images and things like that. I think one thing that would be nice is either through our website or library services, if we had a page where we could gather links to some of these commonly used things. So like links for videos, links for images, links for templates and things like that, Google slide templates, and one common landing page for that. So those of us who are giving presentations have a quick reference page on the intranet that we could go to find some of this stuff. I wonder if there's a possibility to do that.
And Hal has shared to the chat the library guide on image collection, which I also believe not only has the sort of free copyright ones, but also ones accessible to the library.
Right.
I think Dr. Misra had mentioned like Creative Commons. That's something I learned when I was taking a copyright class, and I don't know if we have any resources on that, but it'd be great to inform our faculty about, what is Creative Commons and how does that work, but not just to use and recognize what is allowed to be used, but also when you have your own work, how do you get how do you create or obtain Creative Commons licenses for your own work as well? I don't know if there's already resources or a webinar that was done on that from TLC, but that might be helpful. Milton, hey Milton. Milton asked, how does slides compare to Microsoft Teams? I'm not familiar with Microsoft Teams. Is there a member of our team that knows about Microsoft Teams? Dr. Misra knows.
So I've used Microsoft Teams because our healthcare system uses the Teams format. They're very, very similar. I tend to see Microsoft Teams. Teams, remember, is really the collaboration software. The product that's actually being used to develop the presentation is PowerPoint, right? So what I would suggest to you is that Microsoft Teams works really well if all of your people are using Microsoft PowerPoint and you want to collaborate on a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. And the Google Slides is, again, just the product. Google's ability to interact with one another is baked into the Google Drive and the Google software. And similarly, for those of you that use a Mac, Apple makes their own free version of presentation software known as Apple Keynote. And Keynote also has the ability to do collaborative efforts, although its collaboration skill sets are slightly less advanced than Teams or Google's. So all of those can be done. It's just a matter of you all have to be agreeing that we're gonna work on a Microsoft PowerPoint document. We'll use Teams as the format to do that. We're gonna work on a Google Slides document. We're using Google to do that, or Keynote, and so on and so forth.
Our experience in a classroom setting was that Teams was a little harder to work with, but I don't know. That was just one time. But I was wondering if Google Slides might work better in a classroom setting.
It works better, but not for the reason, Milton, maybe you're thinking. It works better in a classroom setting because your students generally are more savvy with Google than they are with Microsoft. So I will tell you, again, I'm a clinical physician. Until December 1st, I'm still a program director. I've worked for 20 years in the residencies, in the hospitals with students, all of our students. And I will tell you, 95% of our students use Google Slides for their presentations, Google Docs. So they're very, very savvy with the Google framework. So that probably would work better in that scenario.
And I would second that with what Dr. Misra is saying is our ATSU, if you're going to work with ATSU students, they have access to the Google. So it's all within our ATSU network, and it makes it easier for our students and you as faculty to participate in that, because I would assume that Microsoft Teams requires additional support for that. And because we've been using the Google platform for quite a while now here at ATSU, it's going to be a lot easier if we need the support from our IT or ITS people.
Mm-hmm. There was a question in the chat about Google Slides exporting to PowerPoint, and you can export to PowerPoint, absolutely. You always want to check the exported file, like actually open it. Sometimes when you're flipping file formats, especially you'll see that formatting of text and things like that can get cut off or adjusted. So as a good rule of thumb, if you choose, you're like, I did this in Google Slides, but I want to move it to PowerPoint, or I want to move it to Keynote, or vice versa, always open the file in that particular application after you've done the export, and make sure that all your slides look right. If I had $1 for every time my slides were not looking correct. The other thing too is, don't forget that one of the best export ways, especially if you're sharing it with somebody but you don't want them to edit it, is the PDF format. So you can export to PDF, and that gives a non-animated, non-interactive version of the presentation, but essentially just in single image form. And that can be very, very useful too.
Thanks, Dr. Misra. Kelly had just said that she downloaded it as a PowerPoint and the videos do not play, and that is true because it is a video off of YouTube, and you don't actually own the actual file. That's why, earlier we had talked, we touched on the whole concept of when you have a PowerPoint presentation and you're working locally, any of the videos that you have in your PowerPoint, if you want them to play properly, it should be housed locally, so you're not having to go up against buffering or Wi-Fi and the streaming aspect of using the Wi-Fi bandwidth. So when you do convert your slides to PowerPoint and you download it, the videos, if you are using video from the internet, it won't download along with that presentation. And that's primarily because you don't own that video, but two, also with the linking of files as well. So that is a limitation. Any other questions? I know we're past the 1 o'clock hour, so I just want to be mindful and respectful, but any other questions, please feel free to let us know. And we are so appreciative of your time and so excited that you joined us today. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.